They say betrayal hits hardest when it comes from the one person you thought would never hurt you. I used to think that was just some dramatic line people said to make their heartbreak sound deeper, like they were living in a sad movie. But the night I sat alone at that rooftop restaurant, staring at an empty chair across from me, I understood. I understood it in the kind of way that changes a person. Not just emotionally, but fundamentally. Like something inside you dies and isn't coming back. The restaurant was called Zenith. Top floor, dim lighting, slow jazz humming from speakers I couldn't see. It was the same place where Amber and I had gone for our first real date years ago. She had worn this off-the-shoulder navy dress that made her look like something out of a painting, and I remember thinking, this woman could wreck me, and I'd thank her for it. Back then, the idea of being hurt by her seemed laughable, unimaginable. She was the one person who saw me, the real me, and didn't flinch. We had been together 5 years by that point. Not perfect years, but solid ones. Real ones. We'd been through job losses, late rent, a death in her family, my dad's stroke. We fought, sure, but never about the big stuff. I thought we were unshakable. And maybe that's why it hit so hard, because I didn't see it coming. I had no emotional parachute. I was free-falling with no warning. I had it all planned out. The proposal, the setting, the way I'd slide the little velvet box across the table during dessert like I was trying to make a subtle joke of it. That was our thing, quiet moments with loud meaning. I had even picked out a necklace, delicate gold with a charm shaped like a star, because she used to say I was her North Star when things got hard. I engraved our anniversary on the back. It was stupidly sentimental, and I didn't care. I wanted to give her something she could keep close, always. I got there 10 minutes early. She was always 15 late. I ordered wine. I joked with the waiter. I texted her just to check in. No rush, take your time. I'm already here. I watched the host seat couples and families, each of them caught in their own little worlds. I tried not to watch the clock. By the time an hour had passed, I wasn't calm anymore. I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. I texted again. Nothing. The waiter came back a third time and asked if I wanted to order, and I told him I'd wait. But inside, I was already sinking. And then I did the thing I promised myself I wouldn't do that night. I opened Instagram. I scrolled past a few stories. Friends at bars, someone's dog, some influencer trying to sell me a watch, and then I saw it. Amber. On the dance floor at a club downtown. Not just dancing, laughing. Wrapped in the arms of her ex, Jack. The same Jack who had cheated on her in college, who she told me she'd blocked on everything, who we'd both agreed was a toxic chapter she had long since closed. Except apparently the bookmark had never left the page. I stared at the photo for so long my eyes burned. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was old. Maybe someone tagged her in a throwback. But then I saw the timestamp. Posted 11 minutes ago. She hadn't just forgotten me. She had chosen him. While I sat here about to ask her to spend the rest of her life with me, she was out dancing with a ghost I thought she'd exorcised. I didn't finish my wine. I didn't eat. I took out the ring box and opened it one last time just to see it. Not for her. For me. Then I set it on the table next to the necklace, stood up, and walked out. I didn't say anything. I didn't leave a note. I didn't text her some dramatic message about how she broke my heart or ruined my life. There wasn't a single word exchanged between us that night. I think that's what made it worse. It wasn't a confrontation. It was an erasure. She didn't just choose someone else. She unchose me without explanation. That night I didn't go home. I drove for hours. No music. Just the hum of the engine and the dull roar of my own thoughts. I watched the city lights blur past until the roads grew darker and emptier. Eventually, I ended up at some rest stop off the highway and sat there in my car until the sky started to lighten. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared out the windshield like my brain had unplugged itself. People talk about heartbreak like it's a sharp pain, but that wasn't my experience. Mine felt like fog, like I was suddenly untethered from everything. There was no rage, no sobbing, no yelling into the void, just a slow, creeping numbness that settled in my bones. I didn't go back to our apartment. I didn't answer her calls, once they started pouring in. Not that night. Not the next day. Not the week after. I ghosted her like I had never existed. Changed my number. Quit my job. Moved out. I left the city like it was a crime scene. Because in my head it was, she didn't just stand me up. She led a version of me that night. The one who believed in her. In love. In us. People said I was overreacting. That maybe it wasn't what it looked like. That I should have at least let her explain. But here's the thing. I didn't want to hear her explanation. Not because I was scared of what she'd say, but because I already knew. There's a kind of clarity that comes when someone shows you who they really are. You don't need a play-by-play of the betrayal. You just need the moment that confirms it. That moment was enough. The crazy thing is, I don't think she thought I had it in me to walk away, to vanish. Amber always said I was loyal to a fault. And maybe I was. But that night flipped a switch in me that's never flipped back. I didn't just walk away from her. I burned the bridge and turned to ash the life we shared. And for 2 years, that's how it stayed. Until one afternoon, 2 years and some change later, I looked up from my coffee in a downtown cafe, and there she was, standing in the doorway, frozen like she'd seen a ghost. Only thing is, I didn't flinch, didn't even blink. I just stared right through her and said, calm as can be, "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" And in that moment, I think she realized I was gone. Not just from her life, but from the story of us. Like I'd never been there at all. But let's rewind. Let's go back to the moment the ground cracked open and swallowed everything whole. Let's go back to the night Amber made her choice and I made mine. I never saw myself as the romantic type. I was more of a keep-it-practical, show-don't-tell kind of guy. But with Amber, all of that changed. She brought out the side of me I didn't know I had. The guy who cared about anniversaries, handwritten notes, surprise dinners, slow dancing in the living room on a Tuesday night just because. With her, it felt like the little things mattered. And that's why I wanted to get the proposal right. It wasn't just about the question, it was about showing her that after 5 years, I still saw her the way I did that first night. Special. Magical. Mine. I spent months planning that night. Not just weeks, months. I'm talking spreadsheets, bookmarked ring styles, saved reservation confirmations, even a Pinterest board I created under a fake username so my buddies wouldn't catch me turning into a wedding planning cliché. It was ridiculous in the most sincere way possible. But I didn't care. I wanted to do it right. I started with the ring. I didn't go for flashy. That wasn't her. Amber liked simple, timeless things. She wore minimal jewelry, didn't care for trends. So I found a jeweler who worked with recycled platinum and conflict-free diamonds, something she cared about, and I picked a classic round cut. Not huge, not showy, but elegant. Quietly beautiful, like her. Then came the necklace. That one was more personal. It wasn't part of the original plan, but one night she told me about this charm necklace her grandma used to wear. A tiny gold pendant with initials engraved on the back. She said it always made her feel close to home. So I had one made for her. No initials, just the date of our anniversary etched into the back in tiny, almost invisible script. The kind of detail only she would notice. Felt right. The dinner reservation at Zenith was locked in 6 weeks ahead. It had to be that place. It was where she first opened up to me. Where she told me about her brother's addiction and how it broke their family. Where she cried into her wine and apologized for being a mess. And I told her I liked her messy, honest, real. That night bonded us. She told me afterward that's when she knew she could trust me. So yeah, it had to be Zenith. I requested the corner table with the skyline view and even slipped the host an extra $50 to make sure we'd get it. I called twice that week to confirm. Everything was locked down. The plan was to pick her up at 7, bring her to dinner, and pop the question just after dessert. I wasn't going to do the get down on one knee routine. That wasn't us. I wanted it to be low-key, meaningful. Just me sliding the box across the table with a look that said everything before I even spoke. I even rehearsed what I'd say. Something about building a life, about how I didn't want to imagine growing old with anyone else. I kept it short. I didn't want to overdo it and stumble over my own nerves. In the days leading up to it, I was a wreck in the best way. Anxious, excited, constantly checking my pocket to make sure the box was still there like it might vanish if I blinked. I remember standing in front of my bathroom mirror the night before, holding the open box in one hand and practicing what I'd say. I looked ridiculous, talking to myself in the mirror, grinning like an idiot, but I didn't care. Felt like the start of something. The next chapter. The one where everything gets better. Amber had no clue. At least, I didn't think she did. She had been a little distant the past couple weeks, but I chalked it up to stress. Her job was intense, and she was always carrying the weight of 1,000 things at once. I figured she'd come around. She usually did. I just had to get her to that night, that table, that moment. Once she saw the ring, everything else would fade. Looking back now, I can see the cracks I ignored. The way she pulled away when I kissed her goodbye. The short, clipped replies to texts. The increase in last-minute girl nights that never seemed to end before midnight. There were signs, I just didn't want to see them. I was too focused on the finish line. Too caught up in the fantasy of how it was all supposed to go. I even remember telling a friend a few days before, "I'm going to ask her this weekend." He clapped me on the back and told me it was about time. I felt proud, man. Like I was stepping into something real. Grown up. Permanent. I thought I was about to make the best decision of my life. Instead, I was walking headfirst into the kind of pain you don't see coming until it's already wrapped around your throat. The morning of the big day, I woke up early, cleaned the apartment, set out her favorite robe and slippers like it was some kind of romantic hotel welcome. I even played the playlist we made together in the background, soft and nostalgic. She didn't notice any of it. She was in a hurry, distracted, already dressed before I could ask where she was going. Said she had errands to run, last-minute stuff with a friend. I kissed her on the forehead and told her I'd see her later. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That was the last time I saw her before everything fell apart. The last time I saw her before the text messages stopped. Before the ring stayed in my pocket. Before the waiter brought over the candlelit dessert and asked if I still wanted it delivered. I told him no. I told him to cancel the order. I paid the bill, left the ring and necklace on the table, and walked out into the night. I was supposed to propose to the love of my life. Instead, I disappeared from hers. I don't remember much about the elevator ride down. Just that my reflection in the mirrored walls didn't look like me anymore. My eyes were hollow, jaw clenched, shoulders slumped like someone had turned gravity up to 11. My phone was still in my hand, her unanswered texts staring back at me, and I just kept looking at them like maybe if I stared long enough, they'd change. Like she'd suddenly reply, tell me she was on her way, say she'd been caught in traffic and everything was a mistake. But the screen stayed dark, silent. By the time I stepped out onto the street, the city felt colder. Not just the weather, the whole atmosphere. Like the skyline had turned its back on me. I wandered. No destination. No plan. Just walked like I needed to move or I'd collapse. Every block felt heavier. My jacket was too warm. My shirt clung to me from nerves. And my heart thudded out this miserable rhythm that made me feel like throwing up. Eventually, I ducked into a corner bar. Not the kind of place Amber and I would have gone. This one was dark, low ceilings, cheap drinks. Nobody there was celebrating anything. Perfect. I sat down at the far end and ordered whiskey. Neat. When the bartender placed it in front of me, I didn't even lift it right away. Just stared at the amber liquid. How's that for irony? And thought about how fast everything had fallen apart. 5 years together and gone in the time it takes to post a damn Instagram story. I finally took a sip. Burned all the way down. Good. I checked her socials again. Still nothing from her directly, but another friend had posted from the club. Different angle, same scene. Amber in Jack's arms. Laughing like her world hadn't just cracked open someone else's heart. They looked familiar. Too familiar. Like two people who'd never really stopped being something. Like I was the placeholder in between their reunion. I sat there for over an hour, maybe 2, nursing my drink. I must have replayed everything 100 times in my head. Our first date, the road trip up the coast, the time she got food poisoning in Vegas and I spent the night holding her hair back. All those moments that felt like proof we had something real. And now they felt like props in some long-running play that had just been canceled mid-performance. I wasn't angry yet. That came later. That night it was just heartbreak. Raw, stunned, too big to feel all at once. The kind of hurt that sits just under the skin, waiting to erupt when the shock wears off. By the time I made it back to our apartment, it was almost 3 a.m. I didn't even bother turning the lights on. Just stood in the doorway, staring into the space we shared. Her shoes were still by the door. The blanket she always curled up under was still crumpled on the couch. There was a tea mug in the sink with her lipstick smudge on the rim. All those little signs of a life, our life, that now felt like it belonged to someone else. I don't know what I expected when I finally got a message from her. Maybe an apology. Maybe an excuse. What I got was a text around 3:15 a.m. "Hey, sorry I didn't make it. Things got kind of crazy. I'll explain later. Love you. Love you." I read that message over and over until my vision blurred. That was her follow-up to missing the most important night of our relationship. No call. No panic. No acknowledgement of what she knew I was planning. Just things got kind of crazy. I didn't respond. What the hell was there to say? I powered off my phone and dropped it in the drawer. I didn't want to hear it. Didn't want the explanation. Didn't want the damage control. All I knew in that moment was this. I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't be the guy waiting for someone who didn't care enough to show up. The next morning I packed a bag. Just essentials, clothes, toiletries, my laptop. I left the necklace and the empty ring box on the kitchen counter. I didn't leave a note. I figured if she cared enough, she'd know what they meant. Then I got in my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get out. I couldn't breathe in that apartment anymore. Couldn't stand the thought of waking up in the bed we shared, with the scent of her shampoo still on the pillow next to mine. So I drove. Through the city, past the suburbs, until the streets turned rural and the sky stretched wide and blank above me. I ended up at a cheap motel 2 hours outside the city. $20 for a night. The walls were paper thin, the AC barely worked, and the sheets smelled like dust and old cologne. But for the first time in 12 hours I felt numb. Not good, not better, but numb enough to sleep. And that was something. I crashed face first onto the bed and didn't wake up until the sun was already high in the sky. My body felt sore, my mouth dry. I sat up slowly, like a man twice my age, and stared at the blank TV screen. For a minute, I forgot where I was. Then it all came back in a rush. The restaurant, the empty chair, the text. Jack's arms around her. That was the first time I felt the rage. Came slow at first. A simmer. The kind of anger that doesn't scream. It just pulses beneath your skin like something toxic. I wasn't just mad at her. I was mad at myself. For being so blind. For planning a future with someone who was still dancing in the past. For giving so much of myself to someone who couldn't even be bothered to send a real apology. I stood up and stared at myself in the motel mirror. I looked like sh*T. Puffy eyes, wrinkled clothes, yesterday's heartache etched across my face. But beneath that, something else was brewing. Something colder, sharper. I pulled out my phone and turned it on. Dozens of texts, couple missed calls, one voicemail from her voice low and soft, saying she was sorry and she needed to explain. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. Then I blocked her number. I didn't want to hear her voice. I didn't want to see her name pop up every time she felt guilty enough to reach out. I wanted silence, distance, disconnection. That was the day I decided she would never get the chance to break me again. I wasn't going to chase closure. I wasn't going to stick around and wait for her to hand me an explanation wrapped in pretty lies. I was done being the guy left holding the weight of someone else's choices. I was going to vanish from her life, disappear like a ghost. And that's exactly what I did. The first few days felt like a blur, like I was living in someone else's life. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't answer calls from friends or check in with my boss. I stayed off the grid, just me, that cheap motel room, and whatever food I could grab from the gas station down the road. I wasn't thinking ahead yet. I wasn't planning. I was just existing, floating in that weird space between pain and clarity where everything's quiet, but none of it feels peaceful. After a week, I knew I couldn't keep hiding out in motels and back roads forever. I needed to move. Really move. Not just physically but mentally, emotionally. If I stayed any longer in that limbo, I was going to get stuck. And if there was one thing I couldn't afford, it was getting stuck in a life that still somehow revolved around Amber, even after everything. So I drove back into the city, avoided our part of town entirely, and crashed at a friend's place for a few nights. He didn't ask many questions, just handed me a beer, nodded toward the couch and said, "You good?" I nodded back. I wasn't, not even close, but I was grateful for the silence. I made a list, a real pen-on-paper list of everything that had to change. First thing, my number. Gone. Changed it that afternoon. Second, social media. Deleted my accounts, every last one. Not just deactivated, completely wiped. I backed up what I wanted for myself. Photos with my family, a few messages from old friends, and then hit delete. If she wanted to find me online, she'd find a blank page. I quit my job that same week. I had some savings, not a ton, but enough to buy me time. The idea of going back into the office, pretending like everything was normal, smiling while coworkers asked about the weekend, that felt unbearable. I called my manager and told him I needed to step away. Personal reasons. He sounded surprised, but didn't press. I think he heard something in my voice, the kind of finality that doesn't leave room for negotiation. Then I left. Not just emotionally, but physically. Packed up what little I cared to keep. Clothes, some books, a few things my dad had given me, and put the rest into storage. I sublet my place. Took a long look at the apartment Amber and I had once made a home, and I didn't feel sadness. Not then. Just emptiness. Like walking through a movie set after filming wraps. All the props still there, but none of the life. I moved 3 hours away to a smaller city I'd always liked. No real reason why, just that it was quiet and unfamiliar. That was the point. I wanted a place where I didn't know anyone, and more importantly, where no one knew me. I rented a small one-bedroom above a coffee shop, picked up freelance work under a different name, and kept to myself. I was methodical about it. New phone plan, new email. I didn't tell anyone where I was going except my brother, and even then, I asked him not to share it with anyone. Not even our mutual friends. If someone asked, I was doing some soul searching or working remotely out of state. Whatever. Let them guess. Let her guess. Amber tried to reach out. First, it was just texts, then calls, then emails from an old shared account I'd forgotten we had. I blocked everyone. Then came the messages through mutual friends. People I hadn't talked to in years suddenly popping into my inbox. Hey, Amber's trying to get in touch. She says it's important. Wants closure. I ignored them all. Eventually, I started unfriending people. Not out of spite, just necessity. If someone could be a bridge back to her, I burned the bridge. The thing about disappearing is it doesn't happen all at once. There's not one big dramatic exit. There's 1,000 quiet choices, one after the other. Every deleted photo, every ignored call, every street you avoid just in case you run into someone who might ask how she's doing. That's how you erase yourself. And slowly it worked. The messages stopped. The calls disappeared. Friends moved on. Her name stopped showing up on my timeline in passing conversations in mutual circles. She became a shadow, a ghost. I built a new routine. Early morning runs, afternoon work shifts, evenings spent walking streets that never had memories attached to them. I started cooking again. I picked up drawing, something I hadn't done since high school. I wasn't happy, not exactly, but I was clean, untangled. I heard through someone, months later, that her life had started to unravel. She was seen at bars more often, drinking more, partying with people we used to roll our eyes at. Jack predictably didn't stick around. I don't know what happened there, and I didn't want to, but I heard it ended messy. Some fight in public, someone storming out, her crying outside a club. Classic. Eventually, she moved out of our old place. Took a job working at a restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy, just enough to get by. She cut her hair short, dyed it, tried to reinvent herself the way people do when they realize they've burned everything around them and have to start from scratch. I almost respected it, but I didn't feel bad. Not really. I wasn't cruel. I didn't wish her pain. But I also didn't owe her my presence in her healing. She made her choices. She didn't trip and fall into Jack's arms. She walked there, smiling, laughing, while I sat at a table meant for two, ring in hand. So no, I didn't miss her. Not really. I missed the idea of her, the version I thought I knew. But that person didn't exist. And neither did the man she once claimed to love. He was gone now, and I wasn't coming back. It's funny how life has a way of circling back when you least expect it. I wasn't planning on returning to the city. I had no reason to. Everything I'd built since leaving was working. The quiet life, the anonymity, the clean break. It was all intact. But things change. Work opportunities shift. People move. And sometimes you just feel that pull in your gut that says it's time to face something. Not for closure. Not for revenge. Just because running gets old after a while. So I came back. Not to stay forever, just long enough to see if the past still had any weight to it. I rented a place in a different part of town. No familiar streets, no shared coffee spots, none of the haunts we used to visit. This was a new version of the city for me. Same skyline, different lens. I was different now too. Leaner, quieter, a little more guarded, but not bitter. Time will do that for you if you let it. I didn't tell anyone I was back. I didn't want the word spreading. I liked the idea that, for everyone who used to know me, I was still gone. A rumor, a question mark. That version of me, the guy who waited at a rooftop table with a ring in his pocket, he didn't exist anymore. I had nothing to prove. No stories to defend. It happened on a Wednesday. I was grabbing dinner at a place I'd never been to before. Some cozy Italian spot tucked between an old bookstore and a boutique that sold overpriced candles. It was the kind of place that didn't ask for a reservation, where the lights were low and the staff remembered your name after one visit. I'd been there a couple times already, usually sat at the bar with a book or just listened to the soft hum of conversations around me. It was peaceful. That night I was sitting with someone. Her name was Erin. We weren't anything serious, just a few dates in. But she had this way of making you feel like the center of gravity in a room without even trying. She laughed easily, asked real questions, and didn't carry the kind of emotional weight you could feel from across a table. She was light in the best way. We were mid-conversation, something about travel or dogs, I don't even remember, when the bell above the door jingled. I glanced over, instinct mostly, and then I froze. It was her. Amber. She walked in slowly, scanning the restaurant like she wasn't even sure why she was there. Her hair was shorter, darker. She looked thinner, a little older, like life had etched some lessons onto her face whether she wanted them or not. Her clothes didn't have that effortless put-together style she used to wear. They looked chosen, curated, like someone trying to fit into something they weren't sure belonged to them. For a split second, she didn't see me. She was focused on a hostess near the front, asking about a job opening from the sound of it. She had a resume in her hand. That alone was enough to make my chest tighten. Amber, asking for work in a place like this? It didn't compute. The girl I knew had aspirations of running her own PR firm, of launching some boutique brand. She was ambition wrapped in charm. And now here she was, nervous, out of place, holding a resume like it might collapse in her hands. Then she turned. Her eyes met mine. And time stopped. There wasn't a dramatic gasp. No shattered wine glasses. Just a flicker of recognition in her eyes that morphed, slowly, painfully, into shock. Her mouth parted slightly, like she might speak. I didn't move. I just looked at her like I would any stranger in a room. Calm, distant, unbothered. She stared at the woman next to me. Erin was laughing at something, unaware of what was unfolding behind her. Amber's eyes tracked the easy way I leaned in toward Erin, the way her hand brushed my arm casually. There was a time when that gesture would have belonged to Amber. Not anymore. Amber took a step forward. I saw her hesitate, swallow hard, then take another. It was like watching someone try to walk through water. Every step looked heavier than the last. She stopped a few feet from our table, and when she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "Hey," she said. I looked up, blankly. No reaction. No warmth. Just a polite, guarded curiosity. "I'm sorry," I said slowly, tilting my head. Do I know you? The words hit her like a slap. I watched it happen in real time, the way her expression shifted from nervous hope to something else. Confusion, hurt, maybe even shame. Her eyes darted between mine, searching for recognition, some crack in the mask. There wasn't one. She opened her mouth, closed it, then gave the smallest nod, like she understood, like she knew this was her consequence. Sorry, she whispered, stepping back. My mistake. She turned and left before the hostess came back. No second glance. I turned to Erin, who finally noticed my attention had wandered. Everything okay? She asked. I nodded, smiling gently. Yeah, just thought I recognized someone. And that was it. No dramatic confrontation. No angry words or tears. Just a single look and a line that said everything I needed it to say. You don't get to know me anymore. And the truth? I meant it. In that moment, I realized I didn't hate her. I didn't love her either. She was just a chapter I'd finished reading. One I'd folded shut without a bookmark. No need to revisit it. The story had ended, and I had walked away from the pages. Maybe she walked out of that restaurant feeling 100 things. Maybe she regretted everything. Maybe she didn't. But it didn't matter. Not to me. Because when she looked at me, she saw a stranger. And when I looked at her, I saw a ghost. A life I used to live. And one I would never go back to. I didn't look back when she left. I didn't check to see if she paused at the door, or if she stood out on the sidewalk staring through the window, hoping I'd chase her. I didn't need to. That part of me, the part that used to ache to understand her, to fix things, to get some kind of closure, he was gone. And the man who sat in his place had no interest in giving her anything. Not a reaction. Not a second glance. Not even his name. I thought maybe that moment would rattle me more than it did. I thought I'd go home and feel some old wounds split open again. Like seeing her would undo all the work I'd done to heal. But it didn't. I slept just fine that night. Woke up the next morning, made coffee, went for a run. The world didn't end. My chest didn't cave in. I didn't spiral. Instead, I felt whole. I think some part of me had been waiting for that final scene. Not out of revenge. Not to hurt her, but to confirm that I had truly moved on. That I could stand face to face with the woman who shattered me and feel nothing but distance. That I could see her eyes searching for the man she used to know and realize that he didn't live here anymore. That felt like the real closure. Not the kind you beg for, but the kind that comes naturally when time and silence do their job. Over the next few weeks, I kept thinking about that night. Not in a haunted way, just in passing. A mental check-in like, yeah, that happened. Amber never reached out again. She didn't send a letter or message me from some burner account. She got the message. I don't know if she ever talked about it with anyone. If she told friends, I saw him and he didn't even recognize me. Or if she just buried it the way people do when they know they've run out of chances. Either way, it didn't touch my life. It was her burden to carry now, not mine. Erin and I didn't last. We dated for a while, had a good run. But it fizzled out the way things sometimes do when you're both healing in different directions. There wasn't a dramatic end. Just a quiet understanding that we weren't meant to be long-term. And we parted on good terms. I think we both helped each other climb out of something we hadn't fully processed yet. And that was enough. I kept living, built new routines, traveled a little, went back to school part-time, started seeing a therapist, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to make sure I didn't drag old ghosts into new rooms. I learned how to sit with myself, how to be okay in the silence, how to recognize love when it's real, and how to walk away when it's not. I even started dating again. Slowly, cautiously, but with more honesty this time. I didn't pretend to be the guy who had it all figured out. I was upfront about my past, not in a bitter way, just truthful. I've been hurt, I'd say, but I've also healed. That usually led to better conversations than I used to have. Less pretending, more realness. I appreciated that. I still think about Amber sometimes. Not often, not with pain. Just when certain things pop up, an old playlist, a familiar cologne, the way someone laughs that reminds me of her. But the memories don't cut anymore. They're dull, faded, like old photographs you stumble across in a drawer and don't feel the need to keep. The truth is, she taught me something, even in her absence. She taught me what betrayal looks like in the eyes of someone you trust. She taught me how to rebuild from nothing. She taught me that leaving isn't weakness. It's sometimes the bravest thing you can do. And most importantly, she taught me that love without respect is just decoration. Pretty sure, but hollow, and bound to fall apart the second pressure hits. I don't hate her. Not anymore. I think she made a selfish choice, but I also think she was lost in her own way. And maybe that's the saddest part. That two people who once shared everything can fall apart not in a storm, but in a slow, quiet unraveling. One missed call at a time. One lie. One night at a club with someone who never deserved a second chance. Sometimes people don't come back from that. And sometimes they're not supposed to. As for me, I kept going. I let the past stay where it belonged, behind me. I didn't rewrite it. I didn't try to make it noble. I just let it be what it was. A chapter. One that started with hope, burned with betrayal, and ended with silence. And now I live in the aftermath. But not the broken kind. The peaceful kind. The kind where you know exactly who you are, and more importantly, who you'll never be again. I'll never be the guy waiting at a table with a ring in his pocket, hoping someone shows up. I'll never be the guy who ignores his gut because he wants love to win. I'll never be the guy who has to ask if he matters. Because I know better now. And knowing better, that's everything. It's freedom. It's power. It's finally peace.